From Kept Man to Business Tycoon. Part 1, Breaking Free. Chapter 1, The Moment of Exposure. Lin Yu woke up to the sound of shouting and the distinct click of a lock turning. His head throbbed, not from a hangover, but from the sudden influx of memories that weren't originally his. He sat up in the massive king-sized bed, the silk sheets slipping off his bare shoulders. Beside him, the secretary, her name was Xiao Man, trembled violently, her face as white as paper. She pulled the covers up to her chin, her eyes wide with terror. This isn't my life, Lin Yu thought, his mind racing. Or rather, this was my life and it was a tragedy. He remembered everything now. In the original timeline, this was the moment his life fell apart. He was 28 years old, famous in the upper circles as Su Wan's little white face. A pretty face kept for pleasure, living in Su Wan's villa, driving his limited edition cars, and swiping his black card without a care. But he had been greedy and foolish. He cheated with the secretary, thinking he was clever, only to be caught red-handed. In the original story, he had knelt on this very floor, crying and begging for forgiveness. When Su Wan threw him out, he had cursed him behind his back, saying, "That cold old man, if it wasn't for his money, I'd vomit just looking at him." Those words got back to Su Wan. In a fit of rage, Su Wan broke his legs. Due to neglect and infection, Lin Yu died alone in a cheap hospital ward. A miserable end for a man who once lived in luxury. But that fate ends today. The double doors of the master bedroom swung open. Standing there was Su Wan, 30 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp, handsome features and eyes as cold as ice. He wore a tailored dark gray suit that screamed power and wealth. Behind him stood several board members and senior executives of the Su Group, their faces filled with amusement and schadenfreude. They had come to witness the downfall of the man they all secretly mocked as a useless ornament. Su Wan's gaze swept across the messy bed, landing on Xiao Man, and finally resting on Lin Yu. There was no anger in his eyes, only disdain and indifference. To him, Lin Yu was a possession he had grown tired of, a toy that had dared to get dirty. "Get up," Su Wan said, his voice deep and calm, but laced with absolute authority. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Xiao Man burst into tears, scrambling out of bed and kneeling on the floor, naked and humiliated. "President Su, I was wrong. It was Lin Yu. He forced me. Please forgive me." Lin Yu ignored her. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he swung his legs out of bed, stood up, and began to dress calmly. He put on his shirt, buttoned it slowly, fixed his collar, and pulled on his trousers. His movements were slow, composed, and dignified, completely different from the panic everyone expected. The room went silent. Su Wan frowned, confused by this reaction. When Lin Yu was fully dressed, he walked over to the dressing table, picked up his own wallet and phone, the only things he actually owned, and turned to face Su Wan. He stood straight, his handsome face calm, his clear dark eyes meeting Su Wan's cold gaze without flinching. "President Su," Lin Yu said, his voice steady and clear, ringing through the quiet room. "There is no need for a fuss. We both know what this relationship was. A transaction. You provided material comforts, and I accompanied you." Su Wan raised an eyebrow, his expression darkening slightly. "Transaction? You think you were worth what I gave you?" "I don't know," Lin Yu replied honestly. "That is why I want to calculate it properly. Over the past 3 years, the villa, the cars, the clothes, the money I spent, I will calculate the total amount, including interest. I will work to pay off every single cent I owe you. Once it is done, we are strangers." Su Wan was stunned. He had expected begging, he had seen tears, but he had never expected this. The man who was supposed to be groveling at his feet was talking about repayment and separation as if discussing a business contract. "You?" Su Wan let out a short, mocking laugh, though his eyes remained sharp. "You have never worked a day in your life. You don't know how the real world works. You think you can survive without me? Without my money? Without my protection? I survived before I met you," Lin Yu said softly but firmly. "I can do it again." He walked past Su Wan, heading for the door. I will have my things moved out today. You will receive the detailed account statement within 3 days. As Lin Yu walked out of the bedroom, past the crowd of stunned executives, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Behind him, Su Wan stood frozen in place, looking at the empty doorway, a strange, indescribable feeling stirring in his chest. A feeling that told him he had just lost something far more valuable than he realized. Chapter 2. Returning Everything. The entrance hall of the villa was grand, cold, and filled with expensive art pieces that Lin Yu had never really cared for before. Now, looking at them, he felt nothing but relief. He stood by the marble console table. On top of it, he had neatly arranged everything that belonged to Su Wan. The keys to the villa, the keys to 3 luxury cars, and the platinum black card with a 50 million credit limit. Next to them was a set of neatly typed documents, an itemized list of every expense, every gift, every penny spent over the last 3 years, calculated with precision. Su Wan stood opposite him, arms crossed over his chest. His handsome face bore that familiar look of arrogance and mockery, yet his eyes never left Lin Yu's face. He was searching for a crack, for a sign that this was just an act, a strategy to win back his favor. But he found nothing. Lin Yu's expression was calm, even peaceful. Are you sure about this? Su Wan asked, his tone cool. Once you walk out that gate, don't ever think about coming back. No matter how poor you get, no matter how much you beg. I am sure, Lin Yu replied. He was wearing simple cotton clothes, plain, cheap, but his own. He held only one small suitcase containing his personal documents and a few basic items. He didn't take a single shirt or accessory that Su Wan had bought for him. President Su, keep your things. I don't want anything that belongs to you. You think you're noble? Su Wan scoffed, stepping closer, towering over him. You think this drama makes you look good? Everyone knows who you are. The little white face of Su Wan. Do you think any decent company will hire you? Do you think anyone will respect you? Respect is earned, not given by who I sleep with, Lin Yu said, his voice polite but sharp. He picked up the list of expenses and handed it to Su Wan. I have estimated the total. I will transfer the first installment next month. It will take time, but I will pay it all back. Su Wan didn't take the paper. He looked at Lin Yu as if he were looking at a madman. You are ridiculous. Maybe, Lin Yu said. He turned around and walked toward the heavy iron gates that opened automatically. Goodbye, President Su. He stepped out into the bright sunlight. As the gates closed behind him with a heavy thud, sealing off the world of luxury he had lived in for 3 years, Lin Yu took a deep breath. He didn't look back. He flagged down a taxi and gave the address of an urban village on the other side of the city, an area far removed from the high-end districts where Su Wan operated. The taxi drove away, leaving the villa behind. Inside the car, Lin Yu closed his eyes. Ding! A crisp mechanical sound echoed directly inside his head. System initialization complete. Host: Lin Yu. Skill unlocked. Business acumen, max level. Description: all knowledge related to finance, economics, management, strategy, negotiation, and market analysis has been perfectly integrated into your mind. You see opportunities where others see dead ends. You see flaws where others see perfection. Lin Yu opened his eyes, a faint smile touching his lips. He had been worried about how to survive, how to pay back the massive debt he had just voluntarily taken on. But fate had given him a second chance, and it came with the best possible gift. He arrived at the urban village. The streets were narrow and winding, lined with old, low-rise buildings. Clothes hung on lines strung between windows, and the air was filled with the noise of vendors and neighbors. It was cramped, noisy, and dirty compared to the villa, but to Lin Yu, it smelled like freedom. He found the small rental apartment, a single room barely big enough for a bed and a desk. He put down his suitcase, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked out the small window at the bustling life below. Su Wan, Lin Yu whispered to himself. You think I'm useless. You think I can't survive. Just wait. I will pay back every cent. And one day, I will stand higher than you ever could. He stood up, changed into comfortable clothes, and picked up a broom he found in the corner. He wasn't a CEO yet. He wasn't a tycoon. But he was starting from zero, and with the system in his head, zero was just the beginning. Tomorrow he would go find a job. And he knew exactly where he needed to go. Chapter 3. The Cleaner at the Rival Company. 3 days later, Lin Yu stood in front of the towering glass building that housed the He Group, the biggest rival of Su Wan's company, and the only conglomerate capable of competing with them on equal footing. While Su Group was powerful and established, He Group was aggressive, modern, and rapidly expanding. He wasn't here to apply for a management position or an office job. His reputation as Su Wan's former companion was still too fresh. No decent company would hire him, afraid of offending Su Wan or dealing with the gossip. Instead, he walked into the service entrance, filled out an application form, and accepted the lowest position available, janitor. Cleaner. He wore the blue uniform, a simple, slightly loose set of clothes that covered his figure completely. He pushed a cleaning cart filled with mops, buckets, and disinfectant. To anyone passing by, he was just another invisible worker. But as he walked through the corridors, the business acumen skill in his mind was already active. Just by looking at the layout of the offices, the flow of employees, and the documents left casually on desks, he could instantly analyze the company's efficiency, its strengths, and its weak points. He saw things that managers missed. He understood strategies that took experts years to formulate. He made his way to the executive floor. This was where the big decisions were made. Through the glass walls of the large meeting room, he could see the upper echelons of He Group arguing intensely. And there, sitting at the head of the long table, was Lin Yu. At 27 years old, Lin Yu was the heir apparent, a man rumored to be even more ruthless and brilliant than Su Wan. He was strikingly handsome, with pale skin, sharp eyebrows, and cold, intelligent eyes. He wore a custom black suit that fit his slender, tall frame perfectly. While Su Wan was domineering and heavy, Lin Yu was elegant, sharp, and dangerous like a blade. He was currently frowning deeply, listening to his executives argue about a massive infrastructure project worth billions. The tension in the room was palpable. Lin Yu began mopping the floor just outside the glass door. He listened. With his enhanced hearing and understanding, he picked up every word, every number, every clause of the contract they were discussing. Inside, the debate was getting heated. "President He, the deal is almost done," said a senior manager. "The government terms are favorable. The return on investment is projected at 18% annually. It's a gold mine. But the land acquisition clause..." Another executive started, hesitating. "It seems too good to be true. We've had the legal team review it 3 times. There is no risk. If we don't sign now, Su Group will step in and take it. We cannot let them win this time." Lin Yu tapped his finger on the table, his expression severe. He felt something was wrong. His intuition screamed danger, but his lawyers and advisors assured him it was safe. The pressure to beat Su Wan was immense. He was about to speak, about to give the order to proceed, when the glass door slid open. Lin Yu pushed his cleaning cart right into the meeting room. Every head turned. The room fell dead silent. Security guards moved to stop him, but Lin Yu ignored them. He stopped right next to the presentation screen, mop in hand, blue uniform dusty. He looked straight at Lin Yu. "Excuse me, sirs," Lin Yu said, his voice clear, calm, and polite. "I couldn't help but overhear. You are missing something very important in Clause 7, subsection 3. Lin Yu stared at the cleaner. His eyes narrowed, scanning Lin Yu's face. Even in this cheap uniform, with his hair messy from work, there was something striking about him. His features were delicate and handsome, yes, but it was his eyes. They were intelligent, composed, and held no fear of the powerful people in the room. And what would a cleaner know about billion-dollar contracts? Lin Yu asked, his tone cold and mocking, though he didn't order him thrown out. "Probably nothing," Lin Yu replied easily. "But I do know that according to the local municipal regulations updated 6 months ago, The exemption clause mentioned here actually makes your company liable for all environmental remediation costs, which aren't capped. It's a trap. The projected profit of 18%? You will actually lose at least 40% of your capital if you sign this. Lin Yu spoke fluently, citing laws, numbers, and market data with absolute precision. He explained the loophole simply, breaking down complex legal jargon into plain words. The executives turned pale. They looked at their legal advisors, who were sweating bullets, realizing they had indeed missed the update. Lin Yuan stood up slowly. He walked around the table, stopping right in front of Lin Yu. He looked down at the mop in Lin Yu's hand, then back up to his face. The arrogance and coldness in his eyes were replaced by shock, and then intense interest. "What is your name?" Lin Yuan asked softly. "Lin Yu. And you work here, cleaning floors?" "For now," Lin Yu said. He nodded politely. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have the rest of the corridor to mop." He pushed his cart and walked out of the stunned silence of the boardroom, leaving behind a room full of powerful men who had just been schooled by a janitor. Lin Yuan watched him leave, a slow, dangerous, and excited smile spreading across his face. "Lin Yu," Lin Yuan whispered. "Su Wan's former pet. Interesting. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel isekai'd. Chapter 4 Rapid Rise. The meeting room fell into a stunned silence long after Lin Yu had pushed his cart away. Lin Yuan stood by the open door, his gaze fixed on the empty corridor where the young cleaner had vanished. The executives looked at each other, then at their legal team, their faces turning from confusion to horror as they realized the truth in the cleaner's words. A quick cross-check confirmed it. The regulations had indeed changed 6 months ago. If they had signed the contract today, Group would have fallen into a massive financial trap set by their competitors, potentially losing billions. "Find out everything about him," Lin Yuan ordered, turning back to the table, his voice sharp and commanding. "Where he came from, his background, everything. And bring him to my office tomorrow morning. No, bring him here immediately." An hour later, Lin Yu found himself standing in the spacious, modern executive office. He had been in many luxurious rooms before, including Su Wan's villa, but the atmosphere here was different. It wasn't just about wealth. It was about power, efficiency, and sharp intelligence. Lin Yuan sat behind a massive glass desk, looking at a file folder in his hands, the background check on Lin Yu. "So," Lin Yuan said, looking up, his eyes locking onto Lin Yu's. Lin Yu, 28 years old, graduated with top honors in economics and law, but dropped out of graduate school due to family issues. Then, you spent the last 3 years living in Su Wan's villa, known as his companion. Lin Yu stood calmly, hands folded in front of him. He didn't flinch at the mention of his past. "That is correct, President He. Top honors in economics and law," Lin Yuan murmured, tapping the file. "Yet you never used it. You chose to be a kept man instead." "I chose survival back then," Lin Yu replied frankly. "Now I choose to work." Lin Yuan stood up and walked around the desk, stopping just a step away from Lin Yu. He was tall, imposing, and radiated a dangerous charm. "You pointed out a flaw that my entire legal department missed. You speak with the confidence of someone who runs companies, not someone who cleans them. Why are you here, Lin Yu? Did Su Wan send you to spy on me?" Lin Yu met his gaze steadily. "If I were a spy sent by Su Wan, I would have let you sign that contract and go bankrupt. Su Wan hates you, you know that. I am here because I needed a job, and Group is the best place to learn and work. I have a debt to pay off, and I intend to do it with my own hands." Lin Yuan studied him for a long moment, searching for lies. But what he saw was a man completely different from the rumors. The gossip said Lin Yu was vain, greedy, and stupid. Standing in front of him was someone composed, sharp, and dignified. "Very well," Lin Yuan said suddenly, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You saved me from a disaster. I cannot let such talent waste time mopping floors. From today, you are transferred to the Strategic Planning Department as a special assistant. Salary, 10 times your current pay. And you will report directly to me. Over the next few months, the company witnessed a miracle. Lin Yu started as a special assistant, but his rise was like a rocket taking off. With the business acumen skill active at maximum level, he didn't just do his job. He revolutionized how things were done. He optimized supply chains to cut costs by 15% without losing quality. He identified undervalued assets and proposed investments that doubled their value within weeks. He negotiated deals that others deemed impossible, using words and strategies that left opponents stunned. He went from assistant to project manager to department head, and within 6 months, he was appointed vice president of operations. People who once whispered behind his back about his past fell silent, then began to admire, and finally to respect. Even in a high-end tailored suit, standing tall and commanding in glass-walled conference rooms, he remained humble and hardworking. He was handsome, yes, but it was his brilliance that truly captivated everyone. Lin Yu watched this transformation closely. He had initially been interested, then impressed, and now, completely captivated. He found himself looking for Lin Yu in every meeting, waiting for his input, craving his presence. The cold, ruthless heir who never trusted anyone found himself relying entirely on the man who used to belong to his enemy. One evening, in the executive office, Lin Yu stood by the window looking at the city lights, a file in his hand. He had just transferred the 3rd installment of his repayment to Su Wan's account. He was halfway done. "You are amazing, you know." Lin Yu's voice came from behind. He was leaning against the doorframe, holding 2 glasses of wine. Lin Yu turned, a faint, polite smile on his face. "I am just doing my job, President Lin Yu. The heir corrected softly, stepping closer. "Call me Lin Yu when we are alone. We are past formalities, aren't we?" Lin Yu didn't answer, just took the glass offered to him. He knew Lin Yu's feelings were changing. He saw the way the man looked at him, with admiration, possessiveness, and something much deeper. But Lin Yu's focus was clear. Success, freedom, and proving to everyone, especially Su Wan, exactly who he really was. And speaking of Su Wan, news had started circulating in the business circles. Su Group was in trouble. Big trouble. Chapter 5: The Hostile Takeover. Inside the headquarters of the Su Group, the atmosphere was heavy and suffocating. Su Wan sat behind his massive desk, looking nothing like the arrogant, confident man he was 6 months ago. His usually sharp eyes were red-rimmed, his handsome face pale and tired. His suit was wrinkled, his hair slightly messy. He looked exhausted, and for the first time in his life, afraid. On the screen in front of him, the stock price of Su Group was plummeting. Red numbers were dropping like stones. Reports were piled high on his desk. Reports of failed investments, lost contracts, rising debt, and a sudden shortage of capital. How did it come to this? Su Wan muttered, rubbing his temples. It had started 3 months ago. Suddenly, wherever Su Group tried to invest, they failed. Every new project hit a wall. Their partners withdrew one by one. Then, a mysterious competitor began quietly buying up their shares on the open market. It was a silent, precise, and deadly attack. Su Wan couldn't find the source, couldn't identify the enemy, and couldn't stop the bleeding. "President Su," his assistant rushed in, panic written all over his face. "The board members are demanding an emergency meeting. They are talking about a merger or selling the company assets. Also, the bank has rejected our loan application. They said our credit rating has dropped too low." Su Wan slammed his fist on the table, his eyes blazing with suppressed rage and panic. "Rejected? Who is behind this? Who is targeting me? Is it Lin Yu? We don't think so," the assistant stammered. Group has been very quiet lately, focusing on their internal expansion. This feels different. It feels like someone knows every single weakness we have. Every mistake we made in the last 10 years is being used against us. Su Wan slumped back into his chair, suddenly feeling old and helpless. He thought of Lin Yu, It had been 6 months since Lin Yu walked out of that villa. At first, Su Wan had waited. He waited for Lin Yu to come back, broke and crying, begging for forgiveness. He waited for the news that Lin Yu was suffering, that he couldn't survive without him. But the news that came was the opposite. Lin Yu was working for He Group. Lin Yu saved them from a disaster. Lin Yu was promoted to vice president. Lin Yu was becoming a legend in the business world. Every time Su Wan heard his name, it felt like a punch to the gut. He felt angry, betrayed, and strangely empty. The villa was quiet now. Too quiet. No one left his coffee exactly how he liked it. No one understood his moods. No one looked at him with that calm, clear gaze that saw right through his arrogance. And every month, on the 15th, a transfer came into his account. First 500,000, then 1 million, then 3 million. Transfers from Lin Yu, with a note attached repayment. Su Wan looked at the latest transfer notification on his phone. The amount was huge. Lin Yu was paying him back, exactly as he promised. He was proving that he didn't owe Su Wan anything. Is he watching me fall? Su Wan whispered bitterly. Is he the one doing this? Is he taking revenge? But deep down, Su Wan knew it wasn't Lin Yu attacking him. If Lin Yu wanted to destroy him, he could have done it openly. No. This silent, precise attack was different. It was designed to ruin Su Wan completely. 3 days later, the crisis reached its peak. Su Group was facing a hostile takeover. Their biggest rival, a consortium led by foreign investors, had acquired enough shares to call for a vote to replace the board and dismantle the company Su Wan's father had built. Su Wan sat in his office. The lights dimmed, defeat looming over him. He had fought hard all his life to prove he was capable, to be the king of this industry. Now he was about to lose everything. Suddenly, his computer pinged. An email arrived. It was an anonymous message. Attached was a thick file titled Emergency Restructuring Plan and Legal Defense Strategy. Su Wan opened it with trembling hands. It was brilliant. It outlined exactly how to block the takeover. It identified loopholes in the attacker's strategy. It proposed a financial restructuring that would save the company. Every step was calculated perfectly, every risk accounted for. It was the work of a genius mind. And at the bottom, written in simple handwriting, don't let the family name fall. Consider this interest payment. Su Wan froze. He recognized that handwriting. It was neat, precise, and distinct. It was Lin Yu's. Tears of frustration, relief, and deep regret welled up in Su Wan's eyes. The man he threw away, the man he mocked as useless and greedy, was the only one who knew how to save him. And he was doing it silently, anonymously, asking for nothing in return. I was wrong. Su Wan whispered into the empty room, his voice cracking. God, I was so wrong. Chapter 6. Confrontation at the Chamber of Commerce. A week later, the annual Chamber of Commerce Gala was held at the Grand Crystal Hotel. It was the most important social event of the year, where the elite of the business world gathered to network, negotiate, and show off their power. Su Wan arrived, looking tired but composed. Thanks to the plan sent by Lin Yu, he had successfully blocked the takeover and stabilized Su Group. He was safe but barely. He had lost weight, his eyes were sunken, and the arrogant aura that used to surround him was significantly dimmer. As soon as he entered the main hall, he became the center of attention, not out of respect, but out of curiosity and pity. Look, it's Su Wan. He almost went bankrupt, didn't he? I heard he was saved by a miracle. Otherwise, Su Group would be gone by now. What a fall from grace. Remember how arrogant he used to be. A group of older businessmen surrounded him, their smiles fake and mocking. Ah, President Su. Good to see you still standing. One of them laughed, patting Su Wan on the shoulder a bit too hard. We were worried we'd have to attend your company's funeral. Tell us, how does it feel to almost lose everything your father left you? Su Wan's jaw tightened. He wanted to retort, to strike back, but he had no strength left. His company was still fragile, his influence weakened. He stood there, forcing a stiff smile, enduring the humiliation, feeling smaller and smaller with every mocking word. Suddenly, the noise in the hall died down. The music seemed to fade away. Heads turned toward the entrance. The heavy double doors opened. Walking in was Lin Yu, tall, elegant, and radiating supreme confidence. But all eyes weren't on him. They were fixed on the man walking beside him. Lin Yu. He wore a perfectly tailored white-gray suit that shimmered under the crystal lights. It was simple, yet it fit his lean, tall frame perfectly, accentuating his broad shoulders and narrow waist. His short black hair was styled neatly, his fair skin glowing, his handsome features sharp and calm. He didn't just wear the suit. He wore power, elegance, and success. He walked with steady, graceful strides, his posture straight and proud. His clear dark eyes swept across the room, calm and unhurried. Beside him, Lin Yu looked like a loyal knight accompanying his king. The crowd parted naturally, creating a path for them. Gasps and whispers erupted. "Is that Lin Yu, the one who used to be Su Wan's kept man? My God! Look at him. He looks like a prince. I heard he is the real brain behind he group's success now. Vice President Lin Yu. Everyone says he is worth 10 Su Wans combined." Lin Yu stopped. He stood right in front of Su Wan and the group of mocking businessmen. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The men who were laughing at Su Wan just a moment ago suddenly straightened up, their mocking smiles turning into nervous respect. They knew who held the power now. They knew that offending Lin Yu meant offending he group and possibly losing their businesses. Lin Yu looked at Su Wan. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Su Wan looked up at the man he once owned, the man he threw away. The difference between them was heartbreakingly clear. Lin Yu shone like the sun, while Su Wan stood in the shadows, dim and diminished. Su Wan opened his mouth, wanting to say something, wanting to thank him, wanting to apologize. "Lin Yu, Lin Yu didn't let him speak. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small document, and held it up for Su Wan to see. It was a receipt, a final statement. "President Su," Lin Yu said, his voice clear and ringing through the silent hall. His expression was calm, cold, and absolutely decisive. "The final transfer has been made. Every cent I owed you, plus interest, plus the market value of everything you ever gave me. It is all paid. The plan that saved your company, considered part of the settlement." He looked straight into Su Wan's eyes. No affection, no resentment, only absolute finality. "We are even now." He turned his head slightly, looking at the stunned onlookers, then back at Su Wan. "I don't owe you anything anymore, and from now on, don't look for me. We walk different paths." With that, Lin Yu nodded politely, turned around, and continued walking deeper into the hall. Lin Yu followed closely behind him, casting a cold, triumphant glance at Su Wan before disappearing into the crowd beside Lin Yu. Su Wan stood frozen in place. The mocking businessmen were gone, drifting away to curry favor with the new rising star. Su Wan stood alone in the middle of the grand hall, the music and chatter returning around him, but he heard none of it. He looked at his own hands. He had held a diamond in his hands for 3 years, and he treated it like glass. Now the diamond belonged to someone else, and it was shining brighter than ever before. Regret, sharp and agonizing, pierced Su Wan's heart. He realized then that losing his company was nothing compared to this. The true loss was losing Lin Yu, and he knew, deep in his soul, that he would never get him back. Chapter 7. Su Wan's Regret. The grand hall buzzed with life and celebration, but for Su Wan, the world had turned gray and silent. He stood rooted to the spot long after Lin Yu had walked away, his mind replaying those cold, final words. "We are even now." He watched Lin Yu's back as he moved through the crowd. Every step Lin Yu took was confident, every movement graceful and commanding. He was the center of the universe in this room. Heads bowed to him, hands reached out to shake his, and smiles of genuine respect were directed at him. It was a stark, painful contrast to how people had treated Su Wan just moments ago. How did this happen? Su Wan thought, his chest tightening with a pain he had never felt before. I threw him away like trash, and now he is the one everyone looks up to. I treated him like an ornament, and he turned out to be the most brilliant mind of our generation. He remembered the days in the villa. He remembered Lin Yu sitting quietly in the corner, reading thick books on economics and law while Su Wan entertained guests or went out to parties. Su Wan had mocked him then, saying, "Why do you bother reading? You're just going to end up in my bed anyway." Lin Yu had looked up then, with that same calm, clear gaze and said, "Knowledge is never wasted. One day, you might be surprised by what I know." Su Wan had laughed it off. He had treated those words as the silly dreams of a man dependent on him. Now, looking back, Su Wan wanted to beat his own past self senseless. He hadn't just ignored talent. He had ignored the only person who truly understood him, the only person who was capable of standing by his side as an equal. "President Su?" His assistant called out softly, touching his arm. We should go. Everyone is watching." Su Wan shook off the hand, his eyes still fixed on Lin Yu, who was now standing near the champagne fountain, listening attentively to an elderly industry leader. Lin Yuan stood protectively beside him, looking at Lin Yu with eyes full of adoration and possession. That sight was like a knife twisting in Su Wan's heart. He saw how Lin Yuan looked at Lin Yu. It wasn't the look of an employer to an employee. It was the look of a man who worshipped another. Lin Yuan, the ruthless, arrogant heir who looked down on the whole world, treated Lin Yu like a precious treasure. He listened to his opinions, he deferred to his judgment, and he guarded him fiercely. "I had that," Su Wan realized with a jolt of agony. "I had this man first, and I didn't just waste him, I hurt him, I humiliated him, and now he belongs to my greatest rival." Su Wan straightened his suit, wiping the sweat from his palms. A desperate resolve took hold of him. He couldn't let it end like this. He couldn't just walk away and let Lin Yu disappear from his life forever. He had made a mistake, yes, a huge, unforgivable mistake. But he was willing to do anything to fix it. Anything. He started walking toward Lin Yu, pushing through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances. He needed to talk to him. He needed to apologize. He needed to beg for a second chance. But before he could take more than a few steps, a group of people blocked his path. It was the very businessmen who had mocked him earlier. Now their expressions were different, polite, but firm and distant. "President Su," one of them said, his tone formal, "I believe you have some matters to attend to regarding your company's restructuring. We won't keep you." They weren't just blocking him. They were dismissing him. They were protecting Lin Yu. Su Wan looked past them. Lin Yu had glanced in his direction, just for a second. There was no anger in those eyes, no hatred. Worse, there was absolutely nothing. Indifference. Complete and utter indifference. Lin Yu looked at him the same way he would look at a stranger passing on the street. Su Wan felt his legs go weak. He knew then that if he wanted Lin Yu back, or even just to be close to him again, he would have to lower himself completely. His pride, his status, his arrogance. All of it was worthless now. The only currency that mattered in Lin Yu's world was respect, capability, and sincerity. And Su Wan had none of those left in his account. He turned around and walked out of the hall, the weight of his regret crushing him. Outside, under the dark sky, Su Wan took a deep breath and made a vow. "Lin Yu, you say we are even. But I owe you. I owe you more than my company, more than my life. And I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am worthy of even a fraction of your attention. I will change. I will become a man worthy of standing beside you." Chapter 8. The first suitor, Lin Yuan. The gala continued long into the night. After the confrontation with Su Wan, Lin Yu felt a heavy weight lift off his shoulders. He had settled the score. He had proven his point. The past was truly behind him now. He stepped out onto the private balcony attached to the grand hall, seeking a moment of quiet. The night breeze was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of the city below. The view from here was spectacular, lights stretching out like a sea of stars. "You seemed very calm back there," a voice said softly from behind. Lin Yu turned around. Lin Yuan stood in the doorway holding 2 glasses of wine. The warm light from inside spilled out, framing his tall, slender figure. He walked over, handing 1 glass to Lin Yu, and leaned against the railing beside him. "I had 3 years to prepare for that moment," Lin Yu replied, taking a sip. "It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." Lin Yuan looked at him sideways. His usually cold and sharp features were softening. His dark eyes filled with an intensity that had been growing stronger every day over the past 6 months. To everyone else, Lin Yuan was a terrifying, untouchable king. But alone with Lin Yu, he was different. He was gentle, attentive, and surprisingly shy. "You know," Lin Yuan started, his voice lower, deeper than usual. "When I first found out about your past, about Su Wan, I thought it was a shame. I thought, how could someone like you be with someone like him? But now, I am grateful. If he hadn't been such a fool, you would never have come to me." Lin Yu looked at him, amused. "President you sound like you're gloating." "Lin Yuan," the heir corrected immediately, stepping a little closer. "How many times must I tell you? When we are alone, call me by my name." Lin Yu smiled faintly but didn't argue. He looked back at the city lights. "All right, Lin Yuan, why are you really out here? The board members are looking for you to discuss the merger details." "Let them wait," Lin Yuan said dismissively. He turned fully toward Lin Yu, placing his glass on the railing. His expression shifted, from casual to serious, sincere, and incredibly intense. He took a step forward, closing the distance between them until they were almost chest to chest. Lin Yu paused, sensing the change in atmosphere. He looked up, meeting Lin Yuan's gaze. "Lin Yu," Lin Yuan said, his voice trembling slightly. A rare show of emotion from a man who never showed weakness. "Do you know why I gave you that position? Why I let you take charge of everything? Why I trust you with my company, my wealth, and my future? Because I am good at what I do," Lin Yu answered calmly. "Because I make you money." Lin Yuan shook his head slowly. A soft, desperate smile appeared on his face. "No, it's not just that. Money, I have enough of it. Power, I was born with it. But you are different." He reached out, his hand hesitating for a moment before gently resting it on Lin Yu's shoulder. His touch was light, respectful, but filled with overwhelming affection. "From the moment I saw you standing in that meeting room, mop in hand, speaking with more wisdom than all my advisors combined, I knew I had found the only person in the world who is my equal. The only person who understands me, who challenges me, who makes me feel alive." Lin Yuan took a deep breath and spoke clearly, his eyes shining with devotion. "Lin Yu, I don't want you to be just my vice president. I don't want you to just work for me. I want to stand beside you. I want to protect you, to support you, to give you everything you could ever want or need. I am not like Su Wan. I will never look down on you. I will never treat you as inferior. To me, you are the most precious thing in this world." He leaned slightly forward, his handsome face full of earnestness, almost pleading. "Lin Yu, let me be the one by your side. Let me belong to you. I don't care about status, I don't care about what people say. If you want to be the boss, I will follow you. If you want to rest, I will handle everything. Just give me a chance. Let me love you properly." Lin Yu stood frozen, his eyes wide open in pure shock. He had suspected Lin Yuan's feelings were deep, but he never imagined it would come to this. The powerful, arrogant heir of the He group, the man who everyone feared and respected, was standing here, essentially offering to become Lin Yu's devoted partner, willing to lower his own status just to be with him. He looked at Lin Yuan's sincere expression, at the devotion in his eyes, and felt a mix of speechlessness, confusion, and a strange sense of absurdity. First Su Wan regrets losing me, Lin Yu thought, holding back a laugh. Now Lin Yuan is begging to belong to me. What kind of plot twist is this? He gently removed Lin Yuan's hand from his shoulder, stepping back slightly to create some distance. Lin Yuan, Lin Yu said softly, smiling helplessly. You are the president of He Group. People would die to be in your position. And here you are, asking to be my subordinate in life as well as work. For you? Gladly, Lin Yu said without hesitation. Lin Yu shook his head, turning back to the view. Let me think about it. We have a company to run. Remember? He walked past Lin Yu back toward the hall, leaving the heir standing on the balcony, looking at his back with determination and hope. Lin Yu didn't see it, but from the shadows of the corridor nearby, a pair of sharp eyes had witnessed the entire confession. Su Wan stood there unseen, his fists clenched so hard his nails dug into his palms. Seeing Lin Yu openly confess his love to Lin Yu filled him with jealousy, regret, and a terrifying drive to catch up. He confessed? Su Wan thought, grinding his teeth. Fine. If Lin Yu is willing to lower himself, then so am I. I was late, Lin Yu, but I am not out of the race yet. Chapter 9. The second suitor, Gu Yan, the financial tycoon. 2 weeks later, the annual International Investment Summit was held at the city's largest convention center. This was where the heavyweights of the financial world gathered. The bankers, the investors, the fund managers who moved billions with a single phone call. It was a serious, sharp, and ruthless environment. Lin Yu attended as the representative of He Group. Now famous in the industry, his arrival drew attention from every corner. People whispered his name, analyzed his every move, and waited to see what strategy he would unveil. He walked into the main conference hall wearing a perfectly tailored light gray suit. He looked calm, elegant, and incredibly sharp. His mind was active, analyzing the market trends, spotting opportunities, and predicting risks as easily as if he were reading an open book. During the panel discussion on global market trends, Lin Yu was invited to speak. He didn't use notes. He walked to the center stage and spoke fluently for 40 minutes, dismantling common misconceptions, predicting shifts in the economy, and proposing a new investment model that left the audience stunned. He spoke with such authority, such depth of knowledge, and such brilliant foresight that even the oldest, most experienced investors sat up straight, listening intently. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. Backstage, after the session ended, Lin Yu was packing his documents when a deep, magnetic voice spoke from behind him. Brilliant analysis, Lin Yu. Absolutely brilliant. I haven't heard anything that smart in 10 years. Lin Yu turned around. Standing there was Gu Yan. At 32 years old, he was the head of the Yen Capital Group, a legendary figure known as the financial tycoon. He was older, more mature, and had a rugged, powerful charm that was completely different from Lin Yu's elegant beauty. He was tall, sturdy, with sharp defined features, deep eyes, and an air of absolute confidence and authority. He wore a dark navy suit with a gold tie pin, looking every bit the king of the financial world. Gu Yan walked closer, his eyes locked onto Lin Yu's face with intense interest. I have been watching you for a while, Gu Yan said, leaning against the table, crossing his arms. I heard the rumors, of course. The former kept man turned business genius. I thought it was exaggerated. I thought it was just media hype. But after hearing you speak today, I realized the media didn't go far enough. Lin Yu smiled politely. President Gu flatters me. I just look at the numbers like everyone else. Like everyone else? Gu Yan laughed low in his throat, stepping closer until he was standing right in front of Lin Yu. He was tall, towering over Lin Yu slightly, radiating a powerful, overwhelming aura. No, you see things no one else sees. You understand the market better than anyone alive. I checked your history. Every investment you touched in the last 6 months turned to gold. Every company you advised shot up in value. You are a natural-born king of finance. He reached out, gesturing broadly. You are wasting your potential at He Group, Lin Yu. Lin Yu is good, yes, but he is too rigid, too traditional. He limits you, but me, I deal in pure capital. I have resources you can't even imagine. Connections, influence, liquidity of hundreds of billions at a moment's notice. Gu Yan leaned down slightly, looking straight into Lin Yu's eyes, his expression shifting from professional to something much more personal, admiring, and determined. Come work with me. No, come be with me. I will give you half of everything. Half of my company, half of my wealth, half of my power. You want to build an empire? I will hand you the bricks and the land. You want to rule the financial world? We will rule it together. He paused, his voice lowering to a soft, persuasive rumble that could charm anyone. I am not young and impulsive like Lin Yu, and I am definitely not a fool like Su Wan. I know exactly what you are worth. I know exactly what I have found in you. Lin Yu, I don't just want your talent. I want you. Gu Yan looked at him with deep, burning intensity. Let me take care of everything. You just need to stand by my side. Or, if you prefer, you stand in front and I will stand behind you guarding your back. Whatever you want. I have money, power, status, and I am willing to put all of it at your feet just to have you look at me. Lin Yu stood there, blinking slowly. He looked at Gu Yan, this mature, powerful, terrifyingly wealthy man who commanded respect from governments and corporations alike. And here he was, essentially making the same offer as Lin Yu, but on a much grander scale. Lin Yu wants to belong to me. Lin Yu thought, a strange, amused helplessness rising in his chest. And now Gu Yan wants to hand over his entire empire to me. Is this some kind of trend? Did I accidentally become a magnet for powerful men who want to be dominated? Gu Yan waited for an answer, confident, charming, and completely serious. Lin Yu let out a soft sigh, shaking his head with a smile that was equal parts funny and helpless. President Gu, Lin Yu said, you really don't have to do this. I want to, Gu Yan replied instantly, without a shred of embarrassment. And I am very patient. I can wait. But I warn you, I don't give up easily. Not when it comes to business, and certainly not when it comes to you. As Gu Yan left the room, leaving Lin Yu standing there processing this new development, Lin Yu couldn't help but wonder, who was going to be next? He didn't have to wait long to find out. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel isekai'd. Chapter 10, The Third Suitor, Ji Xiao, the Tech Giant. A week later, Lin Yu attended the Global Innovation and Technology Summit, an event where the future of the digital world was discussed and shaped. The venue was a massive futuristic building filled with screens, holograms, and the brightest minds in technology. Lin Yu was there representing He Group's investment division, looking for new startups and technological partnerships. He walked through the exhibition halls, observing the latest breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, automation, and data analysis. With his business acumen skill active, he could instantly tell which projects were revolutionary and which were just flashy toys. He stopped in front of a booth that looked chaotic but intriguing. Wires were hanging everywhere, multiple monitors displayed complex codes scrolling rapidly, and in the middle of it all stood a young man in a gray hoodie and jeans, frantically typing on a keyboard while talking to himself. This was Ji Xiao. At only 29 years old, Ji Xiao was the founder and CEO of Galaxy Tech, the company that had revolutionized the internet infrastructure of the entire country. He was a legend in the industry, a genius who dropped out of university to start his business and became a billionaire by 25. Despite his wealth and status, he looked nothing like a tycoon. He had a boyish face, bright, intelligent eyes behind thin, silver-rimmed glasses, messy, soft black hair, and an energetic, youthful aura. He looked more like a university student than the head of a massive tech conglomerate. Wait a minute. That variable shouldn't be there. Got it, Ji Xiao exclaimed, punching the air in victory as a graph on the screen stabilized. He finally noticed Lin Yu standing there watching him. He pushed his glasses up his nose and looked at Lin Yu, blinking a few times. Then, his eyes widened dramatically, sparkling like he had just discovered a new element. Wow, Ji Xiao said bluntly, staring openly. You are really handsome. Wait, I know you. You are Lin Yu, the one who predicted the market shifts last week. I watched your speech online. For times. You were amazing. Lin Yu couldn't help but smile at his direct, enthusiastic manner. Unlike Lin Yuan's elegance or Gu Yan's overwhelming power, Ji Xiao was like a ball of pure energy and curiosity. Hello, President G. Lin Yu greeted politely. I've heard a lot about your work. Your new data encryption protocol is brilliant. It solves the latency issue that everyone thought was unsolvable. Ji Zhao's mouth fell open. He looked at Lin Yu with pure adoration, as if Lin Yu had just said the most romantic thing in the world. You understand it? Ji Zhao stammered, stepping out from behind the desk and moving closer rapidly. Most people just nod and give me money, but they don't actually get how hard it was to do. But you understand. And you're handsome and smart? That's unfair. He grabbed Lin Yu's arm excitedly, his eyes shining with fervent passion. Lin Yu, listen to me. You are the best strategic mind I have ever seen, and I have the best technology. Think about it. If we work together, if we are together, we can change the world. We can build a future that no one else can even imagine. Ji Zhao took a deep breath, his boyish face turning incredibly serious, as if he were making the most important declaration of his life. I don't care about money. I don't care about power structures. I don't care about who is the boss. Ji Zhao announced loudly, ignoring the curious glances from nearby attendees. I just want to build things and make them work. And I want to build them with you. You handle the direction, the strategy, the big picture. And I will build whatever you ask for. Anything. A system, a company, a whole city's infrastructure. I can do it all. He leaned in closer, his expression softening into something incredibly sweet and devoted, looking at Lin Yu as if he were his ultimate idol. Lin Yu, let me follow you. Let me be your partner. I promise I'll be good. I'll listen to everything you say. I'll even let you manage my schedule and my diet. People say I'm messy, but I can learn. Just let me be the one standing beside you, okay? I don't want to just work for you. I want to belong to you, so I can help you achieve everything you want. Lin Yu stood there, pinching the bridge of his nose, feeling that familiar sense of disbelief and amusement rising again. Lin Yuan offers his loyalty and protection. Gu Yan offers his wealth and resources. And now Ji Zhao offers to become my loyal tech wizard who will build anything I dream of. He looked at Ji Zhao's sparkling, hopeful eyes and couldn't bring himself to reject him harshly. This genius was completely genuine, utterly transparent, and honestly, kind of adorable in his devotion. President Ji. Lin Yu started. Ji Zhao. Just call me Ji Zhao. The tech giant corrected immediately. All right, Ji Zhao, Lin Yu said, shaking his head with a helpless laugh. You really don't need to offer yourself up like this. You are the great genius of the century. Everyone knows that. But geniuses need visionaries. Ji Zhao replied seriously. And you are my visionary. I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking to you from now on. You can't get rid of me. As Ji Zhao happily stood next to him, already talking about future projects and ideas, Lin Yu realized the situation was getting more interesting and more complicated by the day. And deep down, he knew there was still one more person left to make his move. Chapter 11. The fourth suitor, Su Wan, the former master. 3 days later, it was raining heavily in the city. Dark gray clouds covered the sky, and cold water poured down, turning the streets into glistening rivers. Lin Yu stood inside the grand lobby of the Zili Group headquarters, the company he had founded just a month ago, using his savings, his bonuses, and investments guided by his own foresight. He had officially left the group, amicably parting ways with Lin Yuan who, though sad, fully supported Lin Yu's decision to stand on his own. Zili Group was already becoming a powerhouse, specializing in strategic consulting and high-end investments. Lin Yu was now the sole CEO, undisputed master of his own destiny. He walked toward the glass entrance doors, ready to leave for the day, when he stopped. Outside, under the heavy rain, standing right at the edge of the overhang, was Su Wan. He was holding a simple black umbrella, but it seemed useless against the wind and rain. His expensive dark gray suit was soaked through, clinging to his broad frame. His usually neat hair was messy and dripping water, his face pale and tired. He looked smaller now, stripped of the arrogance and domineering aura he used to carry. He looked humbled and incredibly sad. Su Wan saw Lin Yu through the glass. He didn't step forward. He stayed in the rain, standing respectfully, his hands hanging naturally by his sides, head slightly bowed. Lin Yu pushed the door open and stepped out under the shelter of the eaves. The cold wind and misty rain drifted toward him. "President Su," Lin Yu said calmly, "it's raining heavily. You should go inside." Su Wan shook his head slowly. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and filled with a deep, heavy longing that made Lin Yu pause. "I don't deserve to stand under your roof, Lin Yu," Su Wan said, his voice low, rough from the cold and emotion. "I didn't come here to do business. I came to see you, to talk to you, if you'll let me." Lin Yu stood still, waiting. He could have turned and walked away. He had every right to. But seeing Su Wan like this, broken, regretful, and stripped of all his pride, he stayed. "I was wrong," Su Wan said suddenly, his voice cracking. "I was wrong about everything. I thought you were just a pretty face. I thought you were dependent on me. I thought I was the one giving you everything. I was an idiot, Lin Yu, a blind, arrogant fool." He took a step closer, staying in the rain, letting the water wash over him as if he were punishing himself. "I threw away the most precious thing in my life. I treated gold like dirt. And when you left, when you proved me wrong, when you saved my company without asking for anything, I realized the magnitude of my sin. I didn't just lose a companion. I lost the only person who was ever truly equal to me, the only person who could have made me better." Su Wan looked at Lin Yu with eyes full of absolute surrender and devotion, exactly like the other three men, but with an added layer of deep regret and longing that cut right through the heart. "He, Lin Yuan, Gu Yan, Ji Xiao, they all came to you, didn't they?" Su Wan whispered, a bitter but understanding smile on his face. "I saw them. I saw how they look at you. And I know I was too late. I was the first to have you, but I was the last to realize your worth. I am the least qualified among them to stand by your side." He took a deep breath, straightened his wet shoulders, and spoke with determination. "But I am not going to give up. I have nothing left, Lin Yu. My pride? I threw it away the moment you walked out the gate. My status? It means nothing if I can't use it to serve you. My wealth? It belongs to you anyway. Everything I have today is because of what you did for me." Su Wan looked up, his gaze intense and pleading. "I don't ask to be your husband, or your partner, or your equal. I don't even ask for your love. I just ask, let me stay near you. Let me work for you. Let me belong to you. Let me be the one who drives your car, manages your schedule, carries your bag, guards your door, anything. I was your master once, but I was wrong to be. From now on, I want to be yours, completely and utterly yours. You can use me, order me, ignore me, punish me, anything. Just don't push me away." He lowered his head completely, showing his submission. "I offer myself to you, Lin Yu, body, heart, soul, and everything I own. I belong to you." Lin Yu stood there, looking at the man who once treated him as a possession, now standing in the rain begging to become his possession. The irony was heavy, the emotion deep. He looked at Su Wan's tired face, at the genuine remorse in his eyes, and felt his heart soften slightly. It wasn't love. Not yet, maybe not ever. But it was closure. And it was a very strange, very funny situation he found himself in. Lin Yu let out a long sigh, looking up at the gray sky, then back at the four powerful men who were now devoted entirely to him. "Su Wan," Lin Yu said softly, "you really are something else." Chapter 12, Chaos and Choice. 2 days later, Lin Yu stood on the rooftop garden of his new headquarters. It was a bright, clear day. The sun shone down, the wind blew gently, and the entire city stretched out below him like a kingdom waiting to be ruled. But right now, his attention was entirely occupied by the four men standing in front of him. They were the four most powerful, wealthy, and talented men in the country. Men who made the business world tremble with a single word. Men who were envied, admired, and feared by millions. And right now, they were standing in a semicircle around Lin Yu. looking at him with identical expressions of adoration, determination, and eager expectation. To his right stood Lin Yu, elegant and proud in a black suit. His arms were crossed, his chin high, radiating confidence. Yet his eyes never left Lin Yu's face, shining with loyalty. I am your sword and shield. I protect what is yours. To his left stood Gu Yan, mature and charming in a navy suit. He stood relaxed, one hand in his pocket, a soft, possessive smile on his face. I am your treasury. Everything you desire is already at your feet. In front of him bounced Ji Xiao, casual and energetic in his smart clothes. He held a tablet, ready to work at a second's notice, eyes sparkling with excitement. I am your builder. I will create the future you dream of. And slightly behind everyone else, standing quietly and attentively, stood Su Wan, humble and steady in a dark gray suit. He stood straight, hands clasped in front of him, head slightly bowed, ready to serve. I am your shadow. I follow where you go. Lin Yu looked at them, then looked up at the sky, holding his forehead with one hand. The expression on his face was a perfect mix of utter helplessness, amusement, and disbelief. How did it come to this? He thought. He remembered 6 months ago. He was a kept man. Mocked, looked down upon, cheated on, and discarded. He had nothing but debt and a bad reputation. Now, he was the CEO of a rising empire. He was respected and admired worldwide. And the 4 most eligible, powerful billionaires in existence were all standing here, essentially fighting to be his partner, his subordinate, his devoted husband. Lin Yu spoke first, his voice clear and commanding. You have built your own company now. You don't need He Group, but you need me. I know your habits, I know your strengths, I know your mind. I am the one who stood by you first. Gu Yan chuckled, stepping forward smoothly. Experience and resources are more important, Lin Yu. Lin Yu wants to build an empire. I have the capital, the connections, and the global reach to make him the richest man on earth. I can give him the world. Ji Xiao jumped in eagerly, waving his tablet. The world is digital now. I have the technology. With me, Lin, you can control information, innovation, and the future. I'm the most useful one, and I'm the easiest to manage. Su Wan spoke softly, his voice calm and sincere, not fighting but stating facts. I have nothing left to offer but myself. But I know you better than anyone. I know your past. I know your pain. I know what you have overcome. I am the only one who knows exactly how precious you are. Because I was the only one foolish enough to lose you once. I will never make that mistake again. They all turned back to look at Lin Yu, for pairs of eyes filled with love, hope, and rivalry. So, Gu Yan said with a smirk, who do you choose, Lin Yu? Or, Ji Xiao suggested brightly, can we all just stay? We can divide the work. Lin Yuan handles security and operations, Gu Yan handles finance and investments, I handle tech and development, and Su Wan can handle your personal life and daily needs. It works perfectly. Lin Yu blinked. He looked at Ji Xiao, then at the others. Surprisingly, none of them rejected the idea immediately. Lin Yuan frowned but didn't argue. Gu Yan laughed and nodded. Su Wan just waited for whatever Lin Yu decided. They were actually considering it. They were actually willing to share, just to be near him. Lin Yu shook his head, a bright, helpless, and incredibly happy smile spreading across his face. He looked at these 4 amazing men who had given up everything. Their pride, their status, their independence, just to be part of his life. He realized then that he didn't have to choose one. He didn't have to go back to being owned or owning someone. He was free. And in his freedom, he had gathered the most loyal, capable, and loving partners anyone could ever ask for. He took a deep breath, stood tall, and looked at them with clear, bright eyes. You 4. Lin Yu said, laughing softly. You really are unbelievable. He pointed toward the city below, toward the horizon where the sky met the buildings. Fine. If you are all willing to follow me, if you are all willing to stand by my side as equals and partners, then let's do it. Let's build this empire together. Let's show the world exactly what we are capable of. He looked at each of them in turn, his voice firm, powerful, and full of promise. He Lin Yuan Gu Yen Ji Shao Su Wan, you asked to belong to me. Well, from today on, we belong to each other. We don't just rule the business world, we change it. The four men's faces lit up with joy, devotion, and pride. They stood closer together, no longer rivals, but a united team, centered entirely around the man who had risen from nothing to become their king. From kept man to tycoon, from being owned to being worshipped. Lin Yu's journey was complete, and his greatest victory wasn't the wealth or the power. It was the four hearts that beat only for him. And as the sun shone down on them, the future looked brighter and more beautiful than anyone could have ever imagined. Chapter 13, Business Victory. 6 months later, the business landscape of the country had changed completely. A new name had risen to the very top, surpassing even the oldest and most powerful conglomerates. Zili Group, founded and led by Lin Yu, was now the undisputed #1 enterprise in the nation. The grand boardroom on the top floor of the Zili Tower was filled with applause and cheers. On the massive screen at the front, the final results of the fiscal year were displayed in bold, shining numbers. Profit, 400% growth, market value. #1 industry ranking. Lin Yu stood at the head of the long table, holding the signed acquisition contract high in his hand. He wore a custom dark blue suit with subtle gold detailing, looking every bit the young emperor of the business world. His handsome face was calm, confident, and radiant with success. Today marks the end of the beginning, Lin Yu said, his voice clear and steady, silencing the room instantly. We didn't just build a company. We built a standard. We proved that talent, strategy, and innovation will always overcome old money and arrogance. Every person in this room should be proud. But remember, this is just the starting line. The applause erupted again, louder than before. Standing right behind him, in positions of honor and authority, were the four men who had become his pillars. They were no longer leaders of separate companies. They had merged their empires, their resources, and their influence entirely into Zili Group. They were the four pillars, the most powerful executive team the world had ever seen, and they bowed to no one but Lin Yu. He Lin Yuan, now Chief Operations Officer, stood tall and sharp, clapping proudly. He had brought his rigorous management style and his loyal team, turning the operations of Zili Group into a well-oiled machine. He looked at Lin Yu with eyes full of deep affection and pride, happy to trade his own CEO title just to be the one standing closest to him. Gu Yen, Chief Financial Officer, leaned against the wall with a satisfied, charming smile. He had merged his financial empire and capital networks, giving Zili Group unlimited liquidity and power over the markets. To him, money was just a tool, and the best use of that tool was to build a kingdom for the man he loved. Ji Shao, Chief Technology Officer, was bouncing on his heels, holding a small flag with the Zili Group logo printed on it. He had integrated his tech giant, bringing cutting-edge technology, AI systems, and digital infrastructure that made the company decades ahead of its competitors. He was happiest when he was building things for Lin Yu, and his genius was now the engine driving their growth. And slightly further back, standing straight, attentive, and dignified, was Su Wan, now Chief Administrative Officer. He had restructured and saved his own Su Group, then willingly merged it entirely into Zili Group, handing over everything his family had built over generations. He was the most diligent, hardest-working executive in the building. He knew every detail, managed every crisis, and handled every tedious matter, all so that Lin Yu wouldn't have to worry about a single thing. He had found his redemption in service, and his regret had transformed into the purest, most devoted loyalty of them all. After the meeting, Lin Yu walked out onto the observation deck, the highest point in the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold, purple, and red. Below him, the whole city spread out like a glowing map. He looked across the skyline and saw the He Group building, the Yen Capital building, the Galaxy Tech building, and the old Su Group building, all now bearing the new logo of Zili Group, shining brighter and higher than ever before. The four men stepped out behind him, standing in a respectful semicircle. "Look at this view," Lin Yu said softly, resting his hands on the railing. 16 months ago, I was living in a tiny room in an urban village, wondering how I was going to pay off a debt I didn't even really owe. And now, I own all of this. Lin Yuan stepped up to his right side, leaning against the railing. "You never owed anyone anything, Lin Yu. You were always the one with the gold. We were just the ones lucky enough to realize it before it was too late." Gu Yan stepped to his left, handing him a glass of champagne. "And you didn't just buy it. You earned every inch of it. We just supplied the bricks." Ji Xiao ran up to the railing, pointing excitedly at the horizon. "And soon we won't just own this city. We're expanding overseas next month. I've already designed the new headquarters in Europe. It's going to be amazing." Su Wan stood slightly behind, watching Lin Yu's profile with a soft, peaceful expression. "Whatever you want, wherever you go, we are already there, waiting for you." Lin Yu turned to look at them. Four powerful, brilliant, incredible men who had surrendered everything just to be with him. He smiled, a genuine, warm, and happy smile that reached his eyes. "I didn't do this for the money," Lin Yu said quietly. "And I didn't do it for revenge. I did it to prove that a person's worth is never defined by who they belong to. It's defined by what they are capable of." He looked at Su Wan specifically. "And I proved it." Su Wan nodded solemnly, his eyes glistening. "You did. And I am the happiest loser in the world, because losing you taught me how to be a better man. And gaining the right to serve you is the greatest honor of my life." Chapter 14. Final Declarations. A week later, the Global Business Summit was held, the most prestigious international event where leaders from every major country and corporation gathered. Lin Yu was invited as the keynote speaker, a position reserved only for those who had truly changed the world. The venue was a massive auditorium filled with thousands of influential people. The stage was grand, the lighting dramatic. When Lin Yu walked out, the entire room stood up in applause. He wasn't just a CEO anymore, he was a legend, a symbol of talent, resilience, and ultimate success. He gave his speech brilliant, inspiring, and forward-looking. He spoke about the future of business, technology, and humanity. He spoke about equality and merit. And when he finished, the applause lasted for over 10 minutes. But as he turned to leave the stage, the moderator stepped forward with a smile. "President Lin," the moderator said into the microphone, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Everyone knows your story, from humble beginnings to the top of the world. But everyone also talks about the 4 pillars of Zili Group. The 4 men who stand beside you, who gave up their own empires to follow you. Would you mind telling the world what they mean to you?" The crowd fell silent, curious and excited. Lin Yu smiled. He looked toward the side of the stage. Slowly, one by one, the 4 men walked out. Lin Yuan, Gu Yan, Ji Xiao, Su Wan. They walked onto the grand stage, standing in a line in front of the thousands of guests. These were men who once commanded armies of employees, men who once competed against each other ruthlessly. Now they stood united, facing the audience, their gazes only for Lin Yu. Lin Yuan stepped forward first, tall, elegant, and proud. He looked out at the audience, his voice clear and ringing. "They ask why I followed him, why I gave up He Group. I tell them, Lin Yuan was just a name inherited from my father. But standing beside Lin Yu, I became a legend. I admire his wisdom. I admire his strength. I admire his heart. I don't stand here as his employee. I stand here as his most loyal knight. My sword is his. My life is his. I belong to him." He stepped back. Gu Yan stepped forward, mature, charismatic, and powerful. "I was the richest man in the country," Gu Yan said, his deep voice echoing. "I thought money was power. Then I met Lin Yu, and I realized that vision and talent are the only true power. I offered him half my empire, and he turned it into 10 times its value. He didn't need my money. I needed his direction. To me, he is the king of the world. I am just the treasurer who guards his wealth, his happiness, and his heart. I belong to him. He stepped back. Ji Xiao stepped forward. Energetic, bright, and sincere. I build things, Ji Xiao said simply, smiling broadly. I build systems, machines, cities. But everything I built before was empty. It had no purpose. Then Lin Yu came and suddenly, everything I built had meaning. He sees what I create before I even build it. He gives me a reason to work, a reason to dream. I am a genius, yes, but he is my inspiration. I belong to him. He stepped back. Finally, Su Wan stepped forward. The entire audience knew his history. They knew he was the ex-boyfriend, the one who threw Lin Yu away, the one who regretted it the most. Silence fell as they waited for him to speak. Su Wan stood tall, his face calm, humble, and full of deep emotion. He looked directly at Lin Yu before speaking. I made a mistake, Su Wan said, his voice steady and loud. I looked at a diamond and thought it was glass. I held the sun in my hands and thought it was a candle. I judged him by his status, not his worth. I humiliated him, I discarded him. And in doing so, I destroyed my own world. But he saved me anyway. He saved my company, he saved my pride, and eventually, he saved my soul. Su Wan took a deep breath, tears shining in his eyes. I learned the hard way what he is worth. He is worth every bit of my regret, every bit of my effort, and every bit of my love. I was his master once, but I was wrong to be. Now, I am his servant, his guardian, his most devoted follower. I don't ask for his love, though I hope for it. I only ask to be allowed to stay by his side forever. I belong to him. All four men turned to face Lin Yu, and in perfect unison, they spoke together. We belong to you, Lin Yu. Body, heart, soul, and everything we have. We are yours. The audience sat stunned for a second before erupting into thunderous applause, cheers, and tears. It was the most romantic, powerful, and historic declaration the business world had ever witnessed. Lin Yu stood in the center, looking at the four men who had given him everything. He saw Lin Yuan's loyalty, Gu Yan's devotion, Ji Zhao's adoration, and Su Wan's redemption. He saw love in its purest forms. He walked forward, stood in front of them, and smiled, the brightest, most beautiful smile of all. And I belong to you, Lin Yu said softly but clearly, for the whole world to hear. To all of you, we are not owner and possessions. We are not master and servants. We are partners. We are family. And together, we are unstoppable. Chapter 15. The Answer. 6 months later, spring had arrived. The city was blooming with flowers. The air was warm and fresh, and the sun shone brightly over the Zili Group headquarters. Lin Yu stood on the highest terrace, a private garden filled with green plants and colorful flowers. The wind blew gently, lifting his hair. He wore simple, elegant white clothes, looking relaxed, free, and incredibly happy. He walked to the railing, looking out over the horizon. It had been a year and a half since he walked out of Su Wan's villa with nothing but a suitcase. Felt like a lifetime ago. Behind him, the glass doors slid open. Lin Yuan walked out carrying a tray with tea and snacks. Gu Yan followed, holding a light jacket just in case the wind got cold. Ji Xiao came running out with a tablet, excitedly showing Lin Yu a new design sketch. And Su Wan came last, carrying a soft cushion, placing it gently on the bench for Lin Yu to sit on. They surrounded him naturally, effortlessly. There was no more rivalry, no more fighting or jealousy. They had found their balance. They knew their strengths, their roles, and their place in Lin Yu's life. They loved each other too, bound together by their shared devotion to the man who had brought them all together. Lin Yu sat down, leaning back comfortably against the cushion Su Wan had placed. He accepted the tea from Lin Yuan, listened to Gu Yan's report on the upcoming trip, nodded at Ji Zhao's design, and smiled at Su Wan's quiet attentiveness. Finally, Ji Zhao couldn't hold it in anymore. He looked at the others, then at Lin Yu, and asked the question that had been hanging in the air for months. Lin Yu, Ji Zhao said softly, we know you accept us. We know we are together. But you never really gave us your answer. Back then, we all begged to belong to you. Lin Yuan asked you to let him be by your side. Gu Yan offered you the world. I asked to follow you. Su Wan offered his life. He swallowed hard, his eyes wide and hopeful. Now that everything is done, now that we have built everything, now that we are all yours, do you love us? Any of us? Or all of us? Lin Yuan stopped pouring tea. Gu Yan lowered his hand. Su Wan looked up from adjusting the plants. All 4 pairs of eyes focused on Lin Yu, holding their breath. Lin Yu looked at each of them in turn. He looked at Lin Yuan, who saw his worth when everyone else mocked him, who gave him his first chance, who trusted him blindly. He looked at Gu Yan, who respected his mind above all else, who treated him as an equal from day one, who gave him resources without conditions. He looked at Ji Xiao, who admired him purely and simply, who saw him as an idol and a partner, who brought joy and energy into his life. He looked at Su Wan, who hurt him deeply, yes, but who had repented fully, who had learned, changed, and loved him with a humble, enduring devotion that asked for nothing in return. Lin Yu stood up and walked over to them. He took Lin Yuan's hand, squeezed Gu Yan's arm, patted Ji Xiao's shoulder, and finally rested his hand gently on Su Wan's chest, right over his heart. You ask if I love you, Lin Yu said softly, his voice filled with warmth and affection. You 4 gave me something money can't buy. You gave me back my dignity. You gave me respect. You gave me loyalty. You gave me a home. He smiled, his eyes shining with love. I started this journey alone, with nothing but a debt and a broken heart. I thought I only wanted success. I thought I only wanted to prove I was better than my past. But along the way, I found something far more valuable. Lin Yu looked at them, his voice clear and sure. Lin Yuan, you are my first and strongest support. Gu Yan, you are my rock and my partner. Ji Xiao, you are my joy and my inspiration. Su Wan, you are my past. But you also became my redemption and my most attentive guardian. He opened his arms wide, embracing them all in a warm, group hug. I love you, Lin Yu said simply. I love all of you, not because of who you were, but because of who you chose to be for me. You asked to belong to me? Well, I choose to belong to you too. All of you, forever. Su Wan closed his eyes, tears of happiness finally falling. Lin Yuan smiled proudly, holding Lin Yu tighter. Gu Yan let out a satisfied, deep laugh. Ji Xiao cheered quietly, burying his face in Lin Yu's shoulder. The wind blew through the garden, carrying the scent of flowers and freedom. Below them, the city they built stretched out, shining bright. Above them, the sky was clear and endless. Lin Yu had come a long way, from a kept man, looked down upon and discarded, to the most powerful tycoon in the world. From being owned and treated as an object, to being loved, worshipped, and cherished by 4 amazing men who would move mountains just to see him smile. He had broken free. He had risen. He had proven to the world that true worth cannot be bought or owned. And in the end, he had found his happiness. The end. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel isekai'd.